So I ask AI, if you were the devil, what would you do to undermine someone's self confidence and self esteem? And what it said was pretty on point, but it may be something that you haven't heard. So let's get into it. So there's 8 main things that it said that the devil would do to undermine someone's self-confidence and self-esteem. So as you listen to this video, I'd like you to think about if any of these have been used in your life to tear you down. So first thing it said it would do would be attack a person's sense of worth and identity. He would whisper lies about their value by planting thoughts like you're not good enough or God doesn't love you as much as others. And then these lies would encourage feelings of shame and unworthiness to make them doubt God's love and promises, twist scriptures, or make them feel as though they're the exception to God's grace. And over time, this would really wear down their security in God's love, which ultimately creates a really fragile, conditional sense of worth. So, this last way that he can attack our personal worth and identity is something that I think we're all too familiar with. And this is through encouraging comparison to others. Just think about it. If he can stir up all those envious and jealous feelings, then we're really left feeling inadequate all the time. We're stuck in those feelings, and it really pulls us away from gratitude and has us put all of our energy into thinking about the areas that we feel lacking. Number 2 is undermine our understanding of God's forgiveness. So think about it. If he can have us completely focus on our past mistakes and failures and constantly be bringing up the sins we've even repented for, then he really successfully traps us in our own shame prison. And then when we're trapped in this prison, he robs us from really accessing the freedom that Christ promises. If he can make forgiveness seem conditional by twisting our understanding of God's grace, we'll be convinced that God's forgiveness is performance based, which really leads us to more anxiety and more insecurity. And this ties really well into number 3, promote a works based identity. He'll really push on us the idea of perfectionism and religious performance. He'll really make us shift from focusing on our relationship with God and more about how we need to perform, which really creates a pattern of burnout and disappointment and also completely misses the message of the gospel. But the good news is that God's grace is enough to cover all of that and that he doesn't need us to earn his approval through our good works. He successfully shifts our focus from God's grace to our own efforts, which then makes us feel like we can never be good enough. And don't tell me this one doesn't hit home. He seeks to push us into dependence on external validation. Think about this. If we rely on other people's approval rather than God's, then really we are so easily broken by the smallest criticisms and just even the tiniest rejections. It can really create a cycle of people pleasing, which really breaks down our self-confidence and our self-worth. Number 4 is that he would have us isolate from a healthy community. You see, if he encourages isolation, he convinces us that we don't need fellowship, that, others don't really care about us or understand us, that we really, it's not worth it to engage in community because it's just going to be too painful. And it really limits opportunities for us to feel encouraged, to, know truth, to have accountability, which are all really important things for growing our self-confidence and our self-esteem. He's likely going to whisper little things in your ear to try to twist relationships into being sources of pain and shame rather than something that we can grow from. He wants to create misunderstandings, to create tension, to create betrayals that make us want to completely isolate and cut ourselves off from community. Because if community is so painful, it can be really easy to believe that it's best to stay away from others, which ultimately just hurts our self-esteem. Number 5 is that he wants to create an unhealthy focus on self. If he can get us completely obsessed and focused on ourself, then we're doing things like overthinking, self-doubt, insecurity. Then we're so focused on ourselves that we're not really focused on growing our relationship with God or serving and loving others. And we know that serving outside of ourselves is really what makes us feel the most confident. He really wants us to seek fulfillment through external worldly things. If he can convince us that we're going to feel good about ourselves if we have certain achievements, if we meet certain goals, have certain possessions, have a certain amount of money, then he's really trapped us. Because inevitably, when some of these things fall away, or you lose that money, or some way you fail, then you're left feeling completely empty and defeated. Number 6 is he would like to twist our thoughts on the difference between confidence and pride. This can definitely be difficult for Christians because it can be easy to confuse confidence with pride, and we need to avoid pride at all cost. If he can make us think that confidence is arrogant, then we'll be really hesitant to walk boldly in God's truth or really use our gifts that God's given us. He would really encourage self-doubt and want us to see it as a form of humility. True humility comes from trusting God, not from being paralyzed by self-doubt. Number 7 is that he wants us to doubt our purpose and calling. Fear is the killer of joy. So if he can fill our mind with these constant what if scenarios, just making us afraid to take any new step out in faith, over time we get completely stuck and purposeless. We start really questioning our value and worth. We feel completely powerless, which we are not powerless in Christ. And we don't need to be afraid of pursuing our calling. That is something that he wants us to feel. He wants us to feel like our efforts are completely futile. These are all really important and all big in their own way. But I think number 8 might be the biggest lie of all. He wants to distort our view of God's character. If he can confuse us on who God is, since he's our creator, everything else falls. If we don't understand who God is, then we don't understand ourselves properly. If he can make us think that God is just distant and harsh, that he's just a taskmaster that doesn't really want to be involved in our lives, doesn't love us, but just loves to punish, then that can make it very difficult for us to want to approach God and have a relationship with him in a way that's going to restore our sense of self and confidence. Now, a loving father carries out punishments at times. A loving father carries out boundaries and limits, but a loving father also is comforting, is forgiving, is kind, is gracious, is protective, and somebody that we can rely on. If you think about it in the sense of even an earthly father, he's so much better than that. But also, those qualities are really important to forming our identity and our sense of self. So, if the devil can distort our view of God, then ultimately he has the ability to break down our entire confidence. So, what did you think about this? I obviously added in some of my own things and my own thoughts, but I think AI did a really good job to give us 8 good points of what the devil would do if he was trying to break down our confidence. And he does do these things. So I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments of are any of these things that you've struggled with before or ways that you notice that you might be believing some of these lies and it might be breaking down your sense of self-worth and self-confidence. I'd love to hear from you and I hope you found value from this video.